This is CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sams. My good buddy and co-host Tim Storey is traveling around the world this week. Back with me is my very special guest co-host and dear friend, Victoria Robinson.
Thank you for calling me special.
You're very special.
I'm glad to be here.
Now, you think that, hey, you know what? I must be really cool because he asked me back. We've done another episode, a previous episode together, and you must think, oh my gosh, it's literally been, it seems like minutes since we did the last one.
Well, first of all, I don't think that I'm cool. I know that I'm cool, and that's why you asked me back.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
No, the real reason I asked you back is because I wanted the inside scoop on our special guest today because you have been her neighbor for how long?
9 months, but we've been friends for a few years.
Ooh.
And I know her very well.
And that person that you are speaking of is?
Miss the one and only Chonda Pierce.
Chonda Pierce. Now, here's the crazy thing that I never knew about Chonda that I learned. And by the way, she did tell me. She did tell me, but I actually went online and I did the research, and it's absolutely true.
Well, did you think she would tell you something that isn't true?
Well, you just never know in show business, right? You just never know what's going to come out. But do you know that she is the #1 comedian of all time? No, it's not like Ellen DeGeneres or, whoever's out there, right? The #1, and by the way, that's the #1 best-selling female comedian as certified, that's the word.
Yes.
By the RIAA.
That is correct.
Okay, and that's the Recording Industry Association of America.
I have seen the plaque. I've been to her home many times. We live in the same building. We're in a high rise. She's in the penthouse. I'm in the peon place on floor number 4. But we go up and down the elevator in our PJs to hang out sometimes. So I have seen the plaques on her wall. She is one celebrated comedian.
That's too much information. But the RIAA, now that's the organization that puts out the gold albums, the platinum albums, et cetera, et cetera. And Chonda has the biggest of them all when it comes to video.
That's correct.
That's what it is. She's the #1 best-selling artist in that whole category under video. So I guess that means anything under video.
That's right.
So that is just so cool.
She also, David, had huge success with her movie that came out in October 2015 about overcoming depression called Chonda Pierce Laughing in the Dark. It did very, very well.
Well, she's been through a lot. Of course, she lost her husband a few years back. She's had to deal with that. We see these folks go out on the road and they look like they have it all together and they look like, oh boy, look how happy they are. And, they've got all these people around them doing things for them, carrying their coat and their equipment. And, they get a special bus. I never really understood that, by the way.
The bus?
No, the whole idea that life is glamorous in a bus.
Yeah, well, that's true. I've been on her bus. It's fun. Glamorous, I wouldn't say glamorous,
No,
but it's definitely
I need a private
fun.
jet. I can do that with the jet.
One thing I think that why Chonda connects so well with her audience is because she's so real and raw. And I think that when she gets up on that stage and says, hey, I'm struggling. My husband died. And I don't know if you know this, but her sisters, she lost both of her sisters within 2 years when she was a teenager. One died in a car accident at 19. A year and a half later, her younger sister died, found out she was sick, took her to the doctor, and the doctor said, you have maybe a month to live.
Wow, that's something.
So she's been through a lot. And to make people laugh the way she does is a gift.
Well, what she got me laughing on was now that she's back in the quote-unquote dating scene,
She is.
She has been doing, I guess, Match.com.
She has. Some of her girlfriends, not excluding me. I wasn't one of them at that little girl party. Thanks for inviting me, Chonda. They talked her into doing Match. So she has some pretty hilarious stories about that. We've had many a nights talking and laughing about our dating experiences.
Well, let's listen to some of those stories. Here is my interview with Chonda Pierce. What's life like in the fast lane?
Life is good. Life is really good. And what I'm discovering, life is great even if it's not a fast lane. I think that's what happens often to sometimes when your life is being redefined. We seem to not like the quietness of redefinition. We don't want to have to figure out who we are or what we do. And in light of not being a wife anymore, in light of not being a mom anymore, being empty nested, for some reason, the world has taught us that clamor is just where it's at. And we don't do well with quiet. And I'm learning to love the quiet. I'm learning taking a long walk just by myself in the woods is good. Now, if you're apprehensive, get you a good gun. Thank goodness I'm in Tennessee. Or some, pepper spray. Whatever's going to make you have peace about going. Get you a peace when you go walking for peace. It's good. It's good to relax and stop and be quiet. And to be alone is not so bad.
So what has the transition been like going from, you do have those folks in your life, to the quiet?
Good. I have, it's learning. At this stage in my life, I am 50-something, and the something's none of your stinking business. But I am 50-something, and what that has garnered me is an ability to weed through friends that really just don't need to be your friends anymore. People that will applaud your time alone instead of trying to take up every minute of your day or draining from you, or those who are extra needy. At this age, it's really great to learn to say, I just can't do that, or I don't have time for that. Learning to say no and being okay with it, especially as Southern women. Oh my stars, we've got to make the casserole and buy the Girl Scout cookies, and then take, and then do something for the little leaguers, and then, they're asking me to do this for the ladies auxiliary, blah blah. And we don't know how to say no. We think that's so unspiritual. Sometimes the most spiritual thing we can do is take care of our alone time, and have to be okay with being alone. And I told somebody not long ago, being lonely, it just stinks. But being alone is not bad. And I am learning after 31-year marriage, after being a very active mom in my kids' lives and all of a sudden empty nested, I like me. I'm learning to say, I'm not a bad person to take out to lunch. And my check clears. Thank you very much, David Sams.
Should we see how many hits you can get all at once across from the country on Match.com?
Oh, yeah, I gave up on that. Match.com, or I shouldn't say just pick on Match. All dating sites. This is either going to be the greatest material of my career or the saddest thing I've ever been a part of. Right now, it's halfway between sad and maybe, I chuckle. But why is it that men across the universe think the very best picture of them is standing in front of the bathroom sink? Guys, come on. Learn the art of a selfie.
What have you learned in your in your single life?
Oh, so many things. Trying to learn how to cook, for one. That's the hardest part. I'm not fond of cooking, and my cooking is probably not the best, but now I have to eat it like 3 times a week because I have leftovers, trying to learn to cook for just one person. And then you go to the store and you have single serving meals, to buy. Well, why don't they just stick a knife in your heart and twist it? That's just so sad, But what I'm learning is to make those things even fun and challenging, and trying to learn new recipes. I'm learning to be able to cook with onions, and my husband never complains now because he's in heaven. He don't care. So it's things like that. And it's training your mind to look on the bright side. We are so quick to be so deeply saddened. And a lot of that comes with the initial trauma of grief. But I tell widow friends all the time, hang in there, take a deep, deep breath, because soon some of the pain will subside a little bit, And then start training your mind to look at the good stuff. Even on the way here, as I pulled out on the highway and rolling down the road, up came behind me a little red Jeep. And every time I see a little red Jeep Wrangler that my husband loved pillaging through the woods, and going fishing in all the time, instead of that going, oh, look, he's not here, I looked at it and went, oh, look what the Lord sent a little angel on my shoulder, mainly to remind me to slow down. It's the same stretch I get a ticket at all the time. But all that to say, you got to train your mind. You got to work at looking for the good and looking for the positive and embrace that instead of quickly trying to find, what's going to, and there are days, I still hear a song on the radio, or I still ride down the road and wish I had someone to hold hands with and share this moment with. And I'm learning there are moments that I just listen and I go, well, maybe someday, Lord, I'll find somebody to hold hands with this song, or get smart and change the radio station and turn on some disco music, So don't sit in it too much.
I think the biggest challenge I had in being single after many years was the fact that Costco, everything comes in like 4s.
Oh, dear Lord. I know, and it's so mean.
It's like, and they have the best steaks.
Yeah, and if you're not careful, you eat 4.
Exactly. And they, but now that there are these companies that, what is it, Blue Apron?
Yes, I love that. I did that.
Isn't that
There's
cool?
one called Fresh Market, I think, and Blue Apron. We did that. My son and I, we loved it. But, sometimes we would rob some of the, ingredients to put in something else, and we'd get to the end of the week and realize we really got a chemistry set going there in the kitchen. We'd make up all kinds of stuff, But yeah, you're right. Those are fun things, and let's be honest. My husband wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. He is a meat and potatoes guy, So now for this time in my life, I get to try, Florentine chicken, whatever. What did I fix the other night? Almond chicken. Well, for heaven's sakes, you actually had to crush up almonds and put them on your chicken. And I did it, and it was delicious.
Yeah, and we've convinced ourselves that we've gone from
that was so redneck, wasn't it?
Well, we've convinced ourselves that we've gone from that we're doing something good. We've gone from food in a box that was the size of a lean cuisine to something that looked like, it looks like there could be a portable television in it. It's so big, the box. And it's like how the world has changed. And who knows where it's coming from? It's probably coming from California or something.
Well, don't say that. Yeah, that god-awful place. That means they need Jesus out there. No, this is the truth. This is a great day and age when you can open a box and there's fresh basil. You know what I'm saying? And it's sent to you overnight. There's no excuse in the world this day and age to keep yourself in a box and not try new things because it's so available to you, even on a budget.
What advice, what most have you learned about overcoming grief that you can offer someone listening right now who was maybe where you were a while back?
I think the number one thing I guess I could learn, that I've learned that I could tell someone to just really help them through that is give yourself permission to grieve. If your husband passed away 6 weeks ago and you are still struggling and you still cry yourself to sleep at night, or you're still a little apprehensive in your own home and you're locking the door 3 or 4 times, your body is really exactly where it's supposed to be. So lighten up on yourself. It was 6 weeks of, especially for me, I had a man in my life for 31 years and we dated 7 before that. So almost 40 years this man was in my life. So cut yourself some slack. Now, if your husband died 6 years ago and you're still crying yourself to sleep, then also give yourself permission to go and find some help. That there are people you can talk to that can walk you through the stages of grief so you make it to the next stage. So you keep working through the process. And that's the key, is to not let yourself stay stuck on any one step of grief or on any one stage of this process that you just have to let your body go through. And then I think the second thing I've learned that is so imperative, surround yourself with the right people and the right stuff. Great music, keep your house filled with music that's going to be uplifting and not somber and sad. Don't allow yourself to be alone or isolated too much. Grief has a tendency to lie to us and convince us that no one has ever felt this way and no one will ever feel this way. We're never going to climb out of this. We're always going to be lonely and sad. And all that's a lie. Even the Bible says that for everything on the earth, there is a time and a place. So there is a time and a place for your grief, and there is an amount of time you'll have to spend in it. There is a time and a place to laugh, and you need to spend some time in that. So go buy a Chonda Pierce DVD. Isn't that just the cure all? But it's true. You have to be cognitive and very, very much aware of what your body's going through, and that it's okay to let your body do that in a certain reasonable amount of time. And then when you realize, wait a minute, this is 5 years now, and I still don't want to go to church. I still don't want to get out. I still seem to cry myself to sleep. I still hear negative thoughts in my head that I'm going to be alone forever. That's not healthy, and that's not correct. And so those are lies from the enemy. So now you got to go get some help.
When you lost your husband,
Right.
Did you ever picture that happening?
No. It was just a total shock. Now, my story is probably a little more complex in that we had suffered a really tough blow as a couple. We had a child who grew up, married a fella, and they became very isolated, very private, and we became estranged just at the time as our grandchildren were born. And so we were grieving together through this trauma of what hits a family. And now that I've mentioned it sometimes publicly, I get mail and emails constantly of wonderful, godly families that are suffering this same thing. Can't put a finger on it, don't know why they did it. I have a kid that I raised to love Jesus, and now they walked away, and all those things. So we're one of those statistics. We were one of those couples, and we were grieving through it. And in the midst of that, and I've been very honest. First movie we put out with the Fathom event was Laughing in the Dark, and I was very honest to say I didn't do it well either. He spiraled into alcohol. It became what he hid away in and hid the pain of carrying this, this trauma and the difficulties even of his own life. When you begin to medicate one pain, all of them show up. And so he was medicating a lot of pain in his life. And I've been honest to say, and I probably caused some of that. I got on the fast track of a big career that was soaring high, and my medication was, let's just go back to work. Let's just tell as many people we can that Jesus loves them. And maybe, and part of that was then maybe Jesus will listen to our prayers. It was my dysfunction was just as evident as his in his alcoholism. All in the middle of all of that, he had a stroke. He suffered a massive stroke, and we discovered he had blood clots in both legs, both lungs, and his brain. And he was actually probably a walking time bomb. Wow. The sadness of his life is that he spent the last 3 or 4 years, if we had known that his days were limited on that particular day, that in July of 2014, he was going to go home. If we had known that, perhaps we would have medicated ourselves a little differently. Perhaps we would have gone for some help, or we would have looked at our pain and our trauma a little differently and go, okay, our days are limited and we've got to learn how to live with this. But we didn't do that. So the one thing I had to learn in the death of my husband is to let go of regret, because that will eat you up. And that is also something that is not going to benefit you to survive grief. Looking back never helps anybody in the future unless it's something that you're learning from looking back. So you learn the lesson and then you move on. And so it was a shock. It was just an absolute shock. I thought for sure he was going to come around. He was going to do better with his sobriety and all of those things. And just about the time we were doing really well, and we had moved into a little space together and trying to rebuild our lives again together, he had a stroke on our farm, and he just didn't recover from it. But the 7-8 days he spent in the hospital, we had great conversation and good times to tell each other we love each other. There are a lot of deaths and a lot of ways to die, and I'm sad to say I've experienced a lot of those with 2 sisters who are gone and a mother who is gone, and I've been in the room when death shows up in a variety of ways. And one of the sweetest gifts that can happen in your life is the opportunity to say goodbye. And so there are deaths I've had that I didn't get to say goodbye. My 2 sisters passed away. I didn't get to say goodbye. My mother, my husband, I did have an opportunity to say how much I love them. And that is that's a beautiful part. That really does help your healing, I think. Yeah. It's helped me. And the hope of heaven. I don't know how people lose people that they have no hope at all to ever see them again. And I believe the story. So I think I'll see them again.
Over the last dozen years, I've lost all of my grandparents, which I can say, first of all, to be almost 50 years old and have all 4 of your grandparents. And they're still married, and all that. I mean,
exactly. What a blessing.
But I'll never forget, my whole family got to say goodbye to all of them in their hospital rooms. My grandfather, who was just such a bright, shining star, he had lost a lot of his speech and so forth, and he called me. And it was hours away from death, and he mumbled to me how proud he was of me, and thank you for being in my. I'm going to tear up. Thank you for being in my life, and it was like, but you're going to see them again.
Yes,
that's something that we know.
And but that initial pain is real. It's still hard. Yeah.
I got to tell you something funny, and that is, my mom and dad. They are they're starting their 60th year together. Okay. Actually, it's about their 72nd because they dated since they were like in the 4th grade. But they were going to have their 50th wedding anniversary, and I knew that I better get my grandparents on camera.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years before the 50th, just in case.
Yes.
And so I did this 60-minute style interview with a grandfather I was just telling you about, and my grandmother. That's been about 12 years now, because it was 2 years before my mom and dad's 50th. I had this 60 minutes kind of shot on my grandparents, right? And I asked my grandfather, I says, you know what? You've been putting up with Grandma for all these years, because, she was a little like, she was a nag, she always used to call him, I always used to hear, Lawrence, that's how she'd say Lawrence. But I just asked my grandfather, I said, what?
A little Edith Bunker in her there.
I said, what kept you guys together all the years?
Yeah.
He leans in the camera and he goes, the sex was great.
Don't you just love that?
Well, here's my grandfather. He was like, I don't know, 89 at the time, or 90 years old.
Oh my God!
I'm like, this is wonderful.
Oh, you wouldn't trade it for anything. I will say, what the blessing of modern technology. My mother, before she went into the hospital, of course we didn't know when she went in the hospital this was going to be her. She would not get out. She left me a succession of voicemails. Now, my mother would call me every morning at 6 a.m., and she would know my schedule, but she would always call and go, I'm sorry, did I wake you up? And I was like, yes, it's 6 a.m. So when voicemail came along and caller ID, that was, to me, was like the greatest gift from God, because I have caller ID. It's mother. I'm not going to answer it, And so for the last few weeks, I had these incredible voicemail messages from her going, well, honey, I got surgery, and I need to tell you this, because every year she was going to die. I'm sure this is my last year. This is my last year. We've heard that for the last 15 years of her life. This is probably my last Christmas. And it's so that we would all get her what she wanted, But it's so funny. But I love that even to this day, she's been gone now 6 years. I still have those voicemail messages, and I listen to them. And isn't that a gift? What a gift that is. My grandmother was 98 when she passed away. My mother, I think, would have lived longer, but the complication of this surgery, she was 88, I think. But I told my son the other day, my son goes, a lot of that stuff is hereditary, so do you think you're going to live to be 90-something? I said, probably. He goes, oh, brother.
Well, I will tell you, one of the most amazing things you can do is to, none of us have any reason not to do this now.
Yes.
And that's because these phones that we have.
Oh yeah, these smartphones.
These high definition video
right.
cameras. That videotape I took of my grandfather talking about,
he cherished it.
And he also talked about running home and getting the ring from my mom and dad when they got married. He was to, I guess, have the ring, and he forgot it. He had to run home. But I think about the fact that I had my grandfather on camera.
Right.
Now, he died before my mom and dad hit their 50th anniversary. right?
Oh.
But guess what?
And
I
you
had
had
taped that, and I had not told anybody. And I put together this like 15-minute video of my mom and dad on their 50th, and my grandfather shows up.
What a gift.
Oh my gosh.
What a gift.
It was the most amazing moment because I did it as though it was in real time, like a satellite feed.
Yes.
You know, it was like live. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
I just encourage.
You know, and even if you don't have the ability of processing and producing and, you know, all that, you're exactly right. Because of these smartphones, now I tell everybody, if you're going to go record your grandparents, be sure and download it onto something because we're all, you know, that's the other thing. But you're exactly right. There is no excuse to not have these lifetime mementos that you just only imagined when we were kids. I mean, I even think of funny little. My parents, I grew up very, very poor, so there was no motion. You know, the video cameras that came out when I was very young, we didn't have any of that.
Nothing.
I think there was somebody in my church when I was a kid that had some footage of my sisters and I when we were very young. You know, it is. You're right. There's no excuse in this modern age to not capture good stuff like that. And because let's be honest, you can talk about all the success of your life. You can be blessed and honored to have achieved, you know, things that you set out to achieve. But the things we hold so dear are still our tender memories of the people that we love. So work on that.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
When did you discover that you had this gift?
Well, you know, it was real blessing when my mother finally said it was. For a long time, she wasn't so sure. You know what? I used to get spanked for saying and doing all the time, and then I started getting paid for it, and she had no argument anymore. I was a middle child of a very conservative pastor's home, you know, and so that energy had to go somewhere. And I got in trouble a lot. I was always blunt. You know, if there was an elephant, I said the other day, if I die, on my tombstone, I wanted to say, there was an elephant in the room and she talked about it. Because I was born that way, going, really? Really? Is this what we're going to discuss today? You know, I was just always, you know, inquisitive. And I think that's what middle children do. But I was a theater arts major in college, like a lot of young people that I thought about being an actress. You know, I studied broadcasting. When you have a voice like this and an accent like this, it's just really hard. I didn't do well in those classes where you had to read the news, you know. I had too many y'alls in there. And so I got a job at a theme park in Nashville. At that time, it was called Opryland, USA.
Sure.
And I really just went there. I was fresh from my honeymoon. I got home the day after my honeymoon. I started my job at Opryland. And I didn't know how to dance. You know, I'd grown up in a church where that will send you straight to hell in a handbasket. And so I got the job of impersonating Minnie Pearl. And I did that for 6 years.
Wow.
And it was great. You know, daytime job, 6 times a day, you know, 6 days a week.
So
I had to make a group of people laugh.
Give me a sample.
Okay, you ready? You might want to turn your radio down.
Yeah, hold on.
right
Here,
now.
let me turn the mic. Let me get ready for this.
Get your
okay?
level. Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead.
Howdy. I still got it.
That's good.
And the dogs come running, you know. But I met her. I can remember, so you know, about a year into my job, my boss, Joe Gerald, he was so sweet. He said, Sarah Cannon wants to come by and meet you. She heard you're doing a good job. And I said, oh, great, but this is my only break. And I wanted to go get a hot dog or, you know, some stupid excuse that he goes, no, you're going to want to meet her. And I go, well, who is she? And I didn't know Sarah Cannon was Minnie Pearl. You know, I'd been handed a script. I saw a movie clip, you know, to try to get the impersonation correct. And I got to meet her and then became pals and friends, would fill in for her from time to time for events around town. And she just really took in a lot of young performers. And I remember having peanut butter and jelly sitting on a stool in her kitchen talking about life and comedy. And I was working on the Opry one night. I went out to impersonate her for a little while so it would eat up some time as she got older so she didn't have to work as long. And she would skip out behind me and go, well, who are you? And then she would take it from there for a few minutes. And it was just a sweet friendship. And I remember her one night asking me, do you like this kind of thing? And I said, yes, ma'am, I think I do. I gave up, you know, all the little parts in the show where you could sing and wear the spangly clothes. I loved hearing people laugh. And she said, well, you will really never know what laughter is until you make peace with God. I just thought my mother told you to say that, didn't she? Because I was so running from everything I'd been raised to know that was right and good, because I was a bitter, sarcastic middle child. Now, what's great is comedy reeks with sarcasm, and to do it well, you got to be really sarcastic. I certainly couldn't be a preacher. I'd run everybody off.
How wonderful to have the Minnie Pearl basically influence you and help launch your career. That's amazing.
I remember when I got to visit her in the nursing home. Not very many people, what I hear, was not allowed, but I did get to visit her some of her last days, and she had gotten a little feeble. She had fallen and broken her hip, and that's always, for older folks, that's always makes you feel like that's the beginning of the end. And she was such a sweet lady. And then Henry, her husband, they never had children. And they had adopted a lot of folks. I know she and Amy Grant were very dear friends, but they lived on the same side of town. I was not yet that able to live that close to the governor's mansion. I was a little further out. But it was really great. I wished, as a young person, you know how you look back at people that influenced your lives. I wished I'd paid attention or knew what I was going to become and how the Lord was going to run with that in my life, because then I would have paid attention a little more of our conversations and the things that we talked about. Mm-hmm. But I do know that I don't know that the life of comedy would have been highlighted to me had I not gone that route. I just think it was the first introduction of ever thinking, I'd like to go be funny for people. Now, growing up in a very holiness background, in a church denomination where, the arts were very celebrated very carefully, I just thought, well, I'll never be able to do this with any type of emphasis on my faith, because I'm going to hell, to be funny in the church, even though I'd laughed at preachers my whole life. And then I met a young man early in my career who had me tour with him, and his name was Mark Lowry. And we became great friends. And I used to say, I traveled with the Christian comedian Mark Lowry, and then I found out that there are really other Christians out there that are weird and funny. And he was certainly a highlight, a great person to learn and watch, especially in the Christian market. And it wasn't until you start, for the lack of a better word, you start pulling in big numbers and you get the attention of record companies and all that then people in the comedy world started setting up and taking notice. And I'll never forget this hotshot Hollywood manager asking me one time, so how many clubs have you worked? And I said, well, I did the Birmingham Country Club one time because they had a ladies' luncheon. And it's like, all of a sudden, I'm selling as many tickets as any comic out there. And I'd probably been in 3 comedy clubs in my life, and 2 of them I had to pay to get in.
Amazing.
So it was, in the comedy world, it was huge. And then, halfway into it, you just keep your head down and you do your work, and all of a sudden you're on a bus and you're touring, and people are calling and inviting you to do things. And then one night, Sinbad, who I thought was so funny, and I heard he was a preacher's kid, one night he walks up to you and asks for your autograph. I'm like, really? It just blows your mind, And the comedy has always been my opening act, because the reason I do what I do is because sometimes I think I have something I want to say to women. It's women, especially, since I am one. And comedy has always been my open door for that.
Actually, guys, it'd be a great place to meet a woman.
Actually, that's exactly right. Lately, I walked out on a stage, and there was like 15 men sitting near up front. And usually my crowd's always women. And my girl that travels with me now, Karen Williams, who's a great singer, she punched me. She goes, maybe they heard you're single. And then all of a sudden you're real self-conscious going, if I'd known that, I wore my Spanx tonight. But you're exactly right. My dream is that when those women leave, they leave empowered. This tribe of women still longing to find connection. And what are they connecting themselves with? And most often it's celebrity driven, or it's somewhere in their life somebody hurt their feelings, or they've gotten this thought that their rights are getting ready to get taken away from them. In other words, women are still struggling to be women.
Right.
And I want to throw up my hands and go, well, honey, that struggle was over a long time ago. And for me, as a Christian woman, that struggle was over at the cross. When the God of the universe sent a son to said I was worthy enough to die for, man, if that's not the greatest love story I don't know what is. It's not about my femininity. It's not about who I love. It's not about my political stance or where I think immigration needs to go in this country. It's about deep down inside, I feel a confidence from the God of the universe who cares for me. That's what I hope they leave going, okay, we can have difference of opinion and political views and everything, but deep, deep down inside of me, I know whose girl I am. And, I've toured Afghanistan and Iraq, and I've been on USO trips. I've been to countries where you want to talk about the plight of women. You want to talk about the intolerance that the community has for women that are not allowed to, the simplest things, from drive a car to be seen, their flesh to be seen. So we are truly, even with all our ups and downs, you see people striving to go, oh, women's rights, and I want to go, no. You have not yet been told how many children you can or cannot have. Your body has not been taken over by the government or men, that are allowed to do anything they want to, that you're a property, and so we are still very, very blessed.
What would you say, looking back on the last few years,
Yeah.
what would you say is the one thing that you have wished to achieve that you have not yet achieved? I'm not talking about,
Well, somebody bought my lunch today, so that was one. That was a man bought my lunch today, even though it was business related. Look, you got to just get the joy where you can. I think I won. I believe I am always a work in progress. There are days you wake up and you go, oh gosh, my hair's matted. My hips seems a little more hefty than usual, and so you struggle with that. I think for me, my journey is that I'm still constantly content. Sometimes peace and contentment is a wonderful, wonderful gift to have. I'd like to do. I have career aspirations. I'd like to do a talk show someday. I think I'd be good at that. I love Ellen DeGeneres. I think she's so quick-witted. I love watching her. Of course, Oprah, that's the icon among hosting, but things like that. So I have career things I'd like to do, but
you seem to be getting these movie roles. These things are popping up. Why is that?
I don't know. I'm really tickled. I started out as a theater arts major. I wanted to be an actress. And so I'm very, very tickled to do it. I'm finding that I'm falling into a kind of a character actress, and I need to work on that a little bit more. But I can't help it. My Southern accent, I know what's attracting some of the producers and directors. They go, we need a Southern, middle-aged woman. We need a mom type of person. And so they always call me. Except this last role in All Saints, it was, I played someone mean. And I kind of liked it. That's what's terrible. But I had a lot of little old church ladies in my background to channel, and I needed inspiration. It's so sad that I knew exactly who I needed to pretend I was, And, but yeah, I played a mean old biddy.
So give me one of your, close your eyes a minute and give me, let me hear the mean Chonda.
Oh, well, I'm not going to pass the plate because it'll just wind up in the pawn shop.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's a little bit of my mother and my Aunt Ruth, and I grew up a preacher's kid, so that's a dozen little old church ladies I knew that were all little, that wanted wanted the church to grow only to a certain extent, but they didn't want so and so sitting in the pew with them. It's terrible.
What about the people that are mad if you sit in their pew?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Well, I used to have a joke because as a preacher's kid, I would sneak over. There was a little lady that got to church early and left her purse in her spot. And my brother and my sisters and I would sneak in and move her stuff. We'd put her purse somewhere and her scarf over somewhere else and her hat somewhere, So we would just wait and sit back and watch, see if when she came in, see if she was really saved.
I remember once, I must have been about, I must have been around 9 or 10.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, when your dad's the preacher,
Yeah.
you think you get special treatment as the PK.
Oh,
but,
Lord, no, you don't.
But you're really, you're under all this scrutiny. But I remember one time my dad, I was talking to my buddy in the pew.
Yeah.
Just during the sermon.
Yeah.
And my dad was standing out there, goes, David, I'm going to give you one chance. One chance. Otherwise, I'm taking you out back afterwards and giving you a whipping. This is in front of the entire congregation.
Oh, yes.
Right?
There was a generation of pastors that would do that to their kids.
So I'll never forget a couple of services, maybe a couple of weeks later.
Yeah.
My dad was having a sermon, and I'm standing there in the pew, and all I could think of is, I gotta pee. And, and this goes on and on and on, and now let's sing another song. And this
14 verses of Just As I Am. Yeah.
And all I could remember is my dad saying, you will behave, otherwise you're getting a whipping, right? And so I didn't dare move, right? And this goes on, and I peed my pants. No, I'm serious. I'm sitting there, and I'm like 10 years old, right? And I'm thinking to myself,
well, this is a little oversharing, David. There's going to be a shrink that calls you after the show. That's right. David Sams was still wetting his pants at the age of 9. There's a problem with that. There was a generation of pastors who were so hard on I used to call it the stained glass jungle, and you lived in this glass house where everybody peered at the preacher's kids. They became the example, or, this is how you're supposed to raise your kids. And I'm so glad. I think our church world is past that. Now preachers' kids get to sit where they want to sit. But I used to sit on the second row piano side. That's what I used to talk about a lot when I first started. And it is, it's wrong. It's wrong. The kids grow up with that feeling that they can never be good enough because the whole church is peering in on what they're doing. But yeah, I got over the bedwetting before I was 9. I just want to let you know that. Although I was 4 or 5 when I wet the bed, and the evangelist was in the bed that I wet. So there you go. There's a whole other story.
Okay.
This show has just really plummeted. This is our PG-13 show. There's an old saying in country music, who do I have to sleep with to get out of this job? That's how I feel about my job sometimes. Okay, who do I have to sleep with to not get on that bus tonight? And at the same time, oh my goodness, I so love my job. I love the interaction of human beings and watching them laugh and and providing them an outlet. Those are the things that I love. It's been a long, long time since it was ever about stardom or gold records or
The other night, I had a speech to give, and there were nothing like your audience. I think there were 30 people there.
Was that your AA meeting? Just kidding.
Are you picking on the shirt I'm wearing?
I'm picking up your Bob Marley shirt here.
I passed around a box with just white tape around it. And I just passed around and I said, guess what's in the box? And this was a Christian group. And, everybody had gotten up and they were all telling about their story or what they were all about. Yeah. And I don't know if it's a Southern thing or whatever, but everybody was trying to out-testimony everybody else.
Oh, dear Lord.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm sitting there going, oh, my gosh, I can't believe it. Nice people, but this has just got to stop. This has got to stop.
When does reality set in? I know.
So I pulled out this box and I passed it around. And I said, guess what's in this box? And, people came through and they were trying to guess. Of course, there's nothing in it.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, here's what's in it. And I wrote on the back side, I put what I put. And then I turned around and revealed that God was in the box. Wow. And my whole thing is about how we as Christians try to put God in a box and label him.
You're exactly right. What a great word picture. You remember those that used to go around in communication class, you'd have a word picture. That's what you did, David. That's brilliant. It's just brilliant. I might have to steal that, because the truth of the matter is we do that in our own lives. One of my favorite parts that I get to do at night when I'm traveling and doing a concert is picking on every denomination in the room, having them, where are the Baptists tonight? Well, there's 150 different types of Baptists. And then I go down and, tease on each one, tease about the Methodist, and tease about just, a little something quirky about every one of them. And I love, then I always go, don't you think the God of the universe every now and then on a Sunday morning sits on the edge of heaven and dangles his feet over with the disciples and punches them and go, look at this. They got all that out of that one verse right there. I said, feed my sheep, and they cut that thing up in a million different ways. It is just, it is funny.
When did you first realize that you had talent?
Well, I'm kind of waiting on that, I know that I used to sing a lot. As a preacher's kid, you're always saying the special, and we know why they called it special. But, your mama can say you're talented, your friends can say you're good, but it's until someone's willing to pay you.
Right.
Then you're like, okay, I got something here.
What is it about making people laugh that is contagious?
Well, if you're not careful, it can be almost a drug. The release of endorphins, the adrenaline of hearing a crowd laugh, you almost can get addicted to that. And I think it's sadly probably why you see so many comics out there that have a terrible time with drugs or alcohol or suicide, and because they want that feeling all the time. And so I've tried to be very careful to remind myself, and I've had struggles with that where I've just become a workaholic because it's like that's what gives me purpose or makes me feel like I'm doing something, worthwhile. Mm-hmm. And you have to remember that is not reality. Standing on a stage in front of thousands of people every night is a job. If you tried to make it more than that, you're in trouble, because then it becomes almost your idol, your God. And so you have to keep a healthy thought about what laughter does. It is one of the most powerful things that we get to have, not only just physically. It physically has healing attributes, but there is joy that is exuded through laughter, where people around you want that. They want what you've got. How many times do you stand in a lobby or a room where there's lots of people just milling around, or walk through the mall and you see someone tearing up in the corner? Your first reaction is to kind of quietly walk by and walk away. But if you see someone laughing hysterically in a corner, you're drawn to that. You got to go over there and see what it is that they're laughing at. So the gift of that, it goes along. For me, I use the laughter as a tool.
Music artists are all, everyone.
Weird.
Yeah, weird. Yes.
I'm just kidding.
But there are those who succeed are known for a song.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
Even the one-hit wonders have the song.
Yeah.
As a comedian,
we got nothing.
The joke's on you, right?
Yeah.
Is there a particular something, a life-changing something, a joke, a routine that you're known for?
Well, right now I'm kind of known for death and sadness. I am known. I think if you read through the comments on my Facebook page and things like that, and I have over 700,000 followers. That blows my mind, But if you read through it, what I love about my life, my legacy will be the comments that you get that, I went to your concert, I laughed and laughed, but that thing you said about your husband passing away, or being honest about depression, or being honest about that. I think if I'm known for anything, is just I am a crazy person to be so vulnerable in front of folks. I am crazy about letting them see what God is doing, not just telling them what he's doing. And so that's been I love that part of me. I really, there's a lot of parts of me I don't. My flabby arms and my, I'm sitting on the largest part of me right now. So all that to say, there are a lot of things I don't like, but I do love that my job has impacted people. And if it hadn't been for laughter, that's what draws them in. So if it hadn't been for the, to be able to tell them your story. And my story, sadly, is because of my childhood and my life is filled with a lot of tragedy and a lot of pain. But I love being able to show them the triumph over that and what God can do in spite of ourselves and what He can do with our mishaps and our boo-boos and our sadness. I love that part of it. Now, I don't have signature songs, but I do have signature jokes. Every time I go somewhere, somebody will always go, well, tell the 3511, or, tell the story about your dad's pants being unzipped, or tell the Spanx, talk about sweat, which is so funny to me because I always feel like if I listen to a comedian once, I don't want to, I heard it, you know what I mean? People will buy the record, thank the Lord. Then they'll come see you, and they want to hear what they already have at home. To tell you the truth, I've had one joke for 25 years.
So what's 3511?
Oh, 3511 is my best friend and I. Our children went off to college, and it was a sad day, so we decided we needed to process our grief in Cancun. We talked our husbands into letting us go, and we went, and because we're cheap, we got on the internet and we found that you could get a honeymoon package. So my girlfriend and I signed up for a honeymoon package so that we could go down there and get 2 massages and our 2 robes and our, So we had to pretend we were a little bit of a couple for a few days. And in that, then we got jealous, feeling, guilty about what we did. So we called our husbands and said, come meet us the last 4 nights of our, week-long trip. So they did. So we got them a honeymoon package too. So when but we didn't tell them. So when they checked in, were handed a pink robe and a blue robe, and they were and the key to 3511. And so everywhere they went, they had to give out their phone. We were sitting there, and if you went to a restaurant, just put it on our room. What's your room number, sir? 3511. What's your room number, sir? 3511.
Oh, that's good.
See, that was funny when it first came out about 8-9 years ago on a DVD. Now it's not so PC. Now everybody gets nervous. Go, oh no, we can't talk about same-sex stuff.
But life, really just digging down into your life story. That's where all the humor is for all of us. If we really look at it that way.
It always makes me laugh because we go, oh, I did something like that, or oh, I saw something like that, or that reminds me of something my grandma would do, and so we relate to a story because it is something that's happened or we've seen or we felt that way before. And so I think those are the best jokes. Now, although I'm intrigued by joke writers, that the punchline, the 1-2 punch kind of people. There was a comedian years ago named Stephen Wright, and he had this dry delivery, and he would just say, I'm having amnesia and deja vu at the same time. And I have to think for a minute and go, oh, that's hilarious. I don't know why, but that's hilarious. Those kinds of things. I love that, but I love telling the stories. That's the kind of comic I am. Yeah.
I love guys like John Christ.
Oh my goodness!
Those videos
what a
he does.
Boy.
Did you ever see the one that he did on the Christian music?
Oh yes. Did you see the one he did about the Christian mingle?
Yes.
Yes. Oh my stars! He is so clever. He's just a clever young man. He's like a kid of mine, and he's been to my house, and he just he calls me his comedy mother, but he was a preacher's kid, and for every funny hilarious story we all sit around and laugh and joke, and then as you and I both know because we're friends, you go, okay, but here's the not so funny part of it, here, oh gosh, did you have to do this as a preacher's kid? Did you have to do that? And so but John, what I pray for John is he is so talented and so young and so gifted. People come out of the woodwork wanting to latch on, or be a part of his career, or help him do this or help him do that. And so I pray covering for his life so that the right people come along and surround him with leadership and mentoring and wisdom. Yeah.
That's the case with all people with talent. It's
Like
just amazing
get
the
eaten up.
people, the hanger-oners and the wannabes and the...
Yeah. Maybe I don't have that much talent because nobody wants to hang out. No, believe me, in 25 years, I've had a few and pried off a few hanger-oners, yeah. But oh gosh.
I think we ought to do a tour, a comedy tour that we just promote on Christian radio as, well, let's do a spot where everything is bleeped. It's just too, it's just too hot for Christian radio.
I've always wanted to do that. Take a DVD of mine or a bit or CD or whatever and just bleep stuff. That's really not cuss words, but just bleep it as if it was there. Then I used to tell a joke too. I thought you can't win in Christendom sometimes. And if I wear this, it's offensive. If I don't wear that, that's offensive. So I decided I'm going to take everything off that offends people and just start doing concerts naked.
There you go.
I was like, well, if you're offended by that, then it's your fault because everything else has been, I couldn't think of anything I could wear that would not be offensive. Yeah.
Oh, well, I could talk to you for hours, Chonda. Thank you
my
for
friend.
stopping by. I just adore you, and I love you, and you bring so much laughter to us all, and thanks for hanging with me today.
Thank you, my friend. It's always good to see you.
So, Victoria, what I got out of that whole thing, other than the Match.com tips, yeah, I have a history there too. Do you know that the whole idea that laughter is addicting? I have to tell you, I have found that during my darkest, deepest, craziest times where I get inside of my mind, where I can't get outside of my mind, sometimes the way that I get beyond that is I have to watch a funny movie.
I do the same thing.
I have to just take my mind from here to there. Laughter is so magical.
Laughter truly is great medicine. I'll even sometimes get in my car and drive to the local comedy club. I love comedy and I love to laugh. So when I get in that place, being someone who tries to stay positive, I don't want to stay there long because I don't want to get stuck there. So I do the same thing. Sometimes it's Chonda. I'll just run up in the elevator, get on the elevator, pop up there and say, hey, I'm having, a bad time. And she makes me laugh. So I believe that laughter is as medicinal as taking an aspirin when you have a headache.
Well, I know it's powerful because what I used to do when I would be in a funky mood of some sort, I loved back in the day movie soundtracks.
Back in the day.
Well,
you're aging yourself.
Well, look, you and I grew up when we loved CDs.
True.
And let's face it.
Hey, 8 tracks.
8 tracks.
I remember 8 tracks.
I barely remember those.
Now I'm aging myself.
But I owned at one point hundreds of movie soundtracks, and I love them. And the one reason I love them is as a writer and as a director, I used to want to be in the zone when I was planning out, contemplating my production, and when I was storyboarding it. And the thing that would really bring things alive for me, the magic of music.
Mm-hmm.
It would take me from here to there. I could go from being all crazed because of everything going on in my daily life to being in this magical place after listening, let's say, to the soundtrack from Forrest Gump.
You're right.
Right? It's magical. But many times what happened when I would listen to music, I would realize that, okay, I'm feeling kind of down. I'm feeling kind of sad. I'm feeling kind of distraught because, whatever. Either I lost a gig or the girlfriend walked out, and I would put on a song that would reflect that mood, and I would go deeper into, depression.
Exactly.
Right? The one thing I learned was if you don't want to go there, go someplace else and have that tool take you to the next place. And what that was for me was comedy.
That's really interesting for what you just said. It reminded me of a story that this woman that I knew in church. Gosh, it's been years ago. She came to me for counseling and was talking to me. I was on the women's ministry team, and she was saying her and her husband were having issues. And as we got deeper into it, she goes, I can't stop thinking about my ex-boyfriend. And I'm listening to all of our favorite songs, and I'm just being reminded, because music transplants you into another time. So she's going on and on again about that's all she wants to listen to is their music. And it's taking her deeper in depression because she's missing him more and more, and looking at her husband like, why am I here? So I looked at her and said, stop listening to that music. And it was like the scales fell off, and she went, that I never thought about that. Just like what you're saying, music, comedy, things can take you to different places. So we should be careful what we're listening to, because we don't want to go in places we shouldn't go. So I agree with you. When I'm in a bad place, the first thing I do is pop on the television and find a comedy to watch so I can just laugh and forget about it. And then it's funny 2 hours later, you're going, what was I even upset about?
Do you find it kind of strange that a lot of comedians, like Chonda and many, many others, they get paid to entertain us, to put a smile on our face, to bring hope, bring joy. But so many of them live a life, or have lived a life, I should say, where there's that dark corner. There's that corner that we all have.
Right.
But you just never look at Robin Williams, for crying out loud.
Exactly.
Who would have known
That he was so depressed.
that he was so
And
depressed?
so lost. Yeah, and Shonda talks about that, the depression she's battled. And I've talked to her as a friend, not just you interviewing her as a celebrity comedian, but she's my friend. So we've had deep conversations about it. And yeah, she's had to deal with a lot of stuff. And she's chosen to take her pain and make others laugh. And I think it's therapy for her. I think for her, when she's on that stage and she sees people out there laughing and sometimes laughing so hard they're crying, she knows they're forgetting about something they just left out at their home when they walked out the door for even just this 2-hour show. And that brings her great joy to be able to do that. And I know it brings her great joy for her, even herself. It's therapy for her too, not just for those that are at her shows.
What do you do to get out of a funk?
I call my sister. She's my best friend. I'll call her and say, hey, I need you to talk me off this ledge. And she brings things into perspective for me, things that are so simple that I could say to someone else if they made the phone call to me. But when you're in the midst of it, you don't know how to get out. And she'll help me. So she's pretty much my first go-to. If she's not available, because sometimes her son has her phone, which I didn't appreciate, and I asked her to get a pager actually, for when I need her. I will count my blessings. I'll go visit my grandchildren, walk in and they'll Mimi, and they're grabbing me, and then all those things just go away. And when you really look at life and you value it and you look at what you've got, you can't help but not dwell on what you think you don't have. And so I try to be thankful for the things I have rather than wondering, what I want this or I want that, or why does she get this or he gets this. I've got what I've got, and my life is full. On my worst day, I'm a blessed woman, David.
I know years ago when I was going through something, I lived in California at the time, and I used to call my sister up in the middle of the night. She lived in the Eastern time zone. It's great to have somebody to be able to call. And if you're listening right now and you don't have that sister to call, it's amazing what you can find when you do pick up the phone and call a friend that you never even knew that they had it in them to be that kind of a friend.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to reach out to people in order to see what they're capable of.
Yeah, because people don't know what you're going through if you're not willing to tell them.
That's right.
And you honestly are robbing them of a blessing of helping you.
That's true.
And walking through that with you. So that's why if you're thinking, I don't want to bother them, you're not bothering them. Just think of it in a way of this is a blessing to them to help their friend or their sister or whoever it is. And if nothing else, pray. I mean, meditate, pray, and ask God to just comfort you and put his arms around you. Listen, prayer works.
You're listening to CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sams along with Victoria Robinson, and we really appreciate you stopping by and hanging with us today. I'd like to thank Chonda Pierce for joining me, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. And remember, you can subscribe. It's absolutely free. There is no cost whatsoever. I don't really get that word subscribe, that everybody uses in the podcast world, subscribe. I mean, when I think of subscribe, I think of paying Netflix
Right.
$10 or
Yeah,
whatever it is,
exactly.
right?
Subscribe to a magazine. Subscribe- Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. So we have to come up with a new word
Join.
for that. Join.
Join us.
Yeah.
Partner with us. Follow us.
Hit the go button. No. No.
Just listen.
Just listen, right? It's absolutely free. You can find us on Apple Podcast, on Google Podcast, and also on YouTube. We actually do an enhanced version of what you're listening to right here. We have a special channel on YouTube for this, so please do share that. We just want to make it available to everybody because we're here to help you learn from influencers all around the world, believers all around the world who have that special something. And we want to give you the tools so that you can have that special something so that someday we can be interviewing you right here. So until next time, remember this. Life is a real bore in black and white. That's bore, right? Not
Bore.
not like
Boring.
boring, right? Life is a real bore.
That's a word.
Life is a real bore in black and white. So go out there and live it in living color. That's what I'm doing.